The security log at Holloway Plaza Mall was still unremarkable when the first ordinary call came through. A shopper asked where the restrooms were near the food court. Officer Dale Whitmore pointed her toward the east corridor without breaking stride. A teenager asked if the arcade was still open past 9. Dale checked his watch, said another hour, and kept walking his loop. A mother asked for directions to the parking garage elevator. Dale walked her halfway there himself. Nobody watched these exchanges. They weren't interesting. Renee Ashford had been standing near the jewelry counter at Holloway's for 6 minutes already. A canvas tote over one shoulder, a plain gray sweater, hair pulled back under a knit cap against the mall's overactive air conditioning. She was waiting for her sister to finish trying on shoes 2 stores down, scrolling her phone, glancing occasionally at a bracelet, display she had no intention of buying anything from. She didn't know that 11 minutes earlier, a man in a similar gray jacket had walked out of the same store with a tray of rings tucked inside his coat, moving fast through the east exit before the counter clerk noticed anything missing. She didn't know the store's loss. Prevention office had already pulled the security footage and was matching it, frame by frame, against anyone still inside wearing anything remotely similar. The store manager, Curtis Dean, walked the floor with his radio raised halfway to his mouth, eyes scanning the remaining customers. He stopped near the jewelry counter and looked at Renee for longer than a glance requires. Gray jacket near the same counter still on the floor. He didn't check the timestamp on the footage before he spoke into the radio. Possible suspects still on premises, jewelry counter, gray top. Renee hadn't taken anything. She'd been standing in one spot for 6 minutes, visible on 3 different cameras the entire time, though nobody had checked those cameras yet. "Ma'am," Curtis said, approaching her directly, "I need you to come with me to the office for a moment." Renee looked up from her phone. "Excuse me?" "There's been a theft reported near this counter," Curtis said. "We're asking everyone in the vicinity to cooperate with a quick check." Renee's stomach tightened, though she kept her voice even. "I haven't touched that counter. I've been standing right here waiting for my sister." Curtis's eyes moved to her tote bag. "We just need to look inside the bag, as a formality." Renee held it slightly away from him. "I didn't take anything. You can ask the clerk. I never approached the register." A security officer, Wade Corbin, arrived from the mall's central office, tablet already opened to an incident form. Curtis angled it toward him without turning it fully around. "Possible match. Gray jacket, jewelry counter," he said, though the actual footage of the theft showed a man, not a woman, and a jacket several shades darker than Renee's sweater. Wade looked at Renee's tote, then her cap, then the counter 12 feet behind her. "We've had issues with lookouts working with a second person," Wade said, not quite to Renee, not quite to Curtis either. "I'm not a lookout for anything," Renee said. "I've been standing here the whole time. You can check the cameras pointed at me right now." Wade's expression didn't change. "That's exactly what we're going to do. We just need you to wait in the office while we review it." Renee reached for her phone to call her sister. Before she could dial, a man in a suit jacket approached the counter with a garment, bag over one arm, and a phone pressed to his ear. He lowered it just enough to speak. "Sorry, is the tailoring desk still open? I need this hemmed before 5. Curtis's posture shifted instantly. "One moment, sir," he said, turning fully toward him, leaving Renee mid-motion with her phone half raised. The man, Gordon Hale, glanced at Renee, then at Curtis, then back to his phone. "Everything okay?" Curtis lowered his voice, not quite low enough. "Just handling a theft situation." Gordon nodded like this explained itself and stepped past them toward the tailoring counter without another glance. Renee looked between the 2 officers. "I'm not the theft situation. I didn't take anything." Nobody answered her. 2 mall security officers arrived at a light jog from the central corridor. Radios crackling. Curtis waved them over before Renee could finish speaking. "Possible suspect, gray top near the jewelry counter," he said. The lead officer, Marcus Feld, looked at the tablet, not at Renee. "What's the description on file?" Curtis hesitated for the first time. "Store clerk reported a gray jacket near the counter around 11 minutes ago. This is the only person still matching that near the area." Renee pulled out her phone and opened her Photos app. Scrolling to a selfie. She'd taken 40 minutes earlier at the food court with her sister. Time-stamped. "This is me right now. Same clothes 40 minutes ago. Nowhere near this counter." Marcus glanced at it for less than 2 seconds. "We'll need to verify that through the proper channel." Renee felt the sentence land somewhere specific. A place built for people who weren't supposed to need explaining twice. A woman near the perfume counter, Talia Monroe, had lowered her shopping bag. She wasn't watching Gordon Hale head toward the tailor. She was watching the tablet screen over Curtis's shoulder. The way an incident note had been typed before, anyone had actually reviewed the footage. She raised her own phone slightly, Camera already open, not recording yet. Renee typed a message with her thumb, phone angled downward. Jordan, mall security thinks I stole something. I didn't. I've been standing right here. Document if this escalates. She set the phone in her lap, screen facing up, and looked at Marcus. I'd like someone to actually pull the footage before this goes any further. Marcus's jaw tightened slightly. That's what we're working on. Then work faster, Renee said. A pause stretched long enough for Gordon to disappear around the corner. Marcus turned to Curtis. Hold her here while loss prevention pulls the full tape. Curtis typed into the tablet. Renee watched the screen from her angle, upside down. But she'd read enough onboarding paperwork, upside down at her own job, to manage it easily. The words settled into the record before anyone explained them to her. Suspect detained pending footage review. Uncooperative regarding voluntary bag search. Renee hadn't refused a single thing. She'd asked them to check the actual evidence first. I haven't refused anything, she said. I offered you a time-stamped photo and I'm still standing here. Marcus didn't look down at her phone again. We're not trying to make this difficult. Then don't, Renee said. 2 more officers arrived near the mall's East Corridor entrance. Uniforms this time, not mall security. City police. Ma'am, the lead officer said. We've had a report of a theft suspect matching your description. Renee kept both hands visible at her sides. I have not taken anything. I've been standing at this exact spot the entire time. I have a time-stamped photo proving it. The officer looked at Marcus. Marcus said, store staff identified her as matching the suspect. Description near the point of theft. Renee didn't raise her voice. Pull the actual footage. It has a timestamp. It will show a man, not me. The officer hesitated. Talia Monroe, near the perfume counter, raised her phone the rest of the way and began recording. Not Renee's face. The tablet screen over Curtis's shoulder, angled just enough to catch the detained note as Marcus scrolled past it. Curtis's radio crackled. A voice, tired and administrative, asked whether loss prevention had confirmed the actual suspect on camera yet. Curtis answered without thinking. We've got someone detained near the counter matching the description. Renee heard it land the way the incident note had landed. Not a bystander waiting to be cleared. A suspect already decided. The lead officer stepped closer, notepad open. Ma'am, I need you to come with us while this gets sorted out. Renee's hand stayed steady at her sides. I am not resisting, but I do not consent to being removed without the actual footage being reviewed first. The officer looked at Marcus. Marcus said nothing, which Renee understood immediately was itself an answer. The officer reached toward her tote. Renee said, that bag has never been near that counter, and I want it searched in front of a witness, not in a back room. The officer's hand paused midair. Behind them, the actual man in the gray jacket, the one loss prevention's footage would later confirm, was 3 stores down at that exact moment, still inside the mall, walking calmly past a directory sign. Curtis's radio crackled again. This time the voice on the other end wasn't the floor manager. It carried a different weight, clipped and unhurried. Full incident footage pulled. Corporate loss prevention, reviewing live, hold all further action. Curtis looked at the radio like it had spoken out of turn. Marcus glanced at his own radio, uncertain now which instruction outranked the other. A woman in a blazer with a laminated badge reading Halloway Retail Group. Regional Loss Prevention walked briskly from the central office, tablet already open. A second staff member behind her carrying a printed still frame. Renee recognized the urgency in her stride before she recognized the badge. Denise Okafor. Before anyone explains anything, Denise said, I need the full incident timeline and the footage log in that order. Curtis handed over the tablet without argument this time. Denise scrolled, then held up the printed still frame beside Renee. The store stayed quiet, while people's eyes moved between the photo and the woman standing in front of them. The still frame showed a man, dark green jacket, 6'2", walking through the east exit 11 minutes before. Renee had even entered the store. She looked up. When was this detained note entered? Curtis's mouth opened, then closed. Denise answered her own question by checking the timestamp. 4 minutes after store staff noticed a gray-toned garment near the counter, and 7 minutes before anyone actually reviewed the footage. That would have cleared her instantly. Renee said, that record still says I was uncooperative. Denise nodded once. It does. I refused nothing. I offered a time-stamped photo within the first minute. I know, Denise said. She typed. Correction. Footage confirms suspect does not match detained individual. No theft conduct by this customer. Delay was not caused by customer behavior. She locked the entry. A gray tag appeared beneath it. Preserved under loss prevention compliance hold. The lead officer stepped back from Renee entirely, notepad lowering. Denise turned to him. Your report will need to reflect that this detainment was based on a staff note, entered before footage review, not on confirmed identification. The officer looked at Marcus, who looked at the floor. Denise turned to Curtis. Why was a customer detained for 11 minutes before anyone actually watched the footage? That would have cleared her in 30 seconds. Curtis said we wanted to be sure before letting anyone leave the area. Denise looked at the still frame again. This image existed the entire time in our system. Reviewing it requires opening a folder. It doesn't require detaining someone first, Marcus said quietly. I followed the store's identification. You entered uncooperative into an incident record, without an actual refusal to support it, Denise said. Store floor escalation permissions are suspended pending review. Curtis's face went still in the way. Faces go when a sentence lands. Somewhere permanent. Marcus said, this was about caution, not anything else. Caution doesn't need a detainment, Denise said. Caution doesn't need 11 minutes when the footage was sitting in a folder the whole time. She turned to Renee. Ms. Ashford, you're free to go. And the actual suspect's image has just been sent to every officer in this mall. Renee looked at the tablet, then at Denise. I want the record corrected before I leave, not after. Denise nodded. Already entered. She turned the tablet so Renee could read it herself. The words sat where the earlier ones had sat. In the same clean font, meaning something different now. Customer conduct was not a factor. Detainment originated from unverified staff identification, not from customer behavior. Talia Monroe lowered her phone, recording still saved, and caught Renee's eye for just a moment. Renee gave a small nod. Denise continued into her tablet. Store staff escalated to detainment based on partial visual match, not confirmed footage. She looked toward the officer. Your incident report will need to note the review timestamp. He didn't argue. 9 minutes later, the actual suspect was stopped near the mall's south entrance by 2 officers holding the still frame Denise had printed. He still had the tray of rings in his jacket pocket. 6 weeks later, Holloway Retail Group audited every in-store detainment logged across its properties for the previous quarter. 26 entries were reopened. 16 had been resolved without police. Contact once footage timestamps were checked before, not after detainment. 10 had involved a customer held before any footage review took place at all. Curtis Dean was reassigned out of floor management. Pending a service conduct review, Marcus Feld retained his position after completing a mandatory identification verification course. His escalation permissions restricted for 90 days. Denise Okafor's compliance hold, requiring footage review before any customer detainment could proceed, became standard across every Holloway property within 4 months. A year later, the first slide in Holloway Retail Group's new hire loss prevention. The training deck didn't show Renee's name. It didn't show the still frame of the real suspect. It showed a single incident log entry, time-stamped, with the words uncooperative regarding voluntary search struck through in red, and beneath it in plain black text, review the footage before you write the story. If this made you think about how a vague description can turn an innocent bystander into a suspect, tell us what you think stores should be required to verify before detaining anyone. This is a fictional story created for storytelling purposes.